That night in the Tokyo Dome, the air felt heavier than usual, a mixture of the piercing humidity of a Japanese winter and the energy of tens of thousands of souls held in the same breath. Lightsticks waved like an endless silver ocean, creating an artificial horizon within the majestic stadium. At the center of the expansive stage stood a figure who seemed so fragile, yet possessed an incredible gravitational force. Park Jimin. There was something about Jimin that always transcended mere vocal technique or choreography. There was an aura of melancholy that clung to him like morning mist. As the first piano notes of Crystal Snow began to echo, the atmosphere suddenly turned into an eerie silence, as if time itself had decided to pause to listen to what this man had to say. Crystal Snow wasn't just another pop song in their discography. It was a wintry ballad that demanded emotional clarity and extreme vocal range, and that night, Jimin seemed ready to give it his all, or perhaps let it all go. His voice came in softly, almost a whisper, touching the opening lines with the care of someone handling a real snow crystal that could melt at any moment. Every syllable that escaped his lips felt like a prayer sent to the ceiling of the Tokyo Dome. The audience fell silent, transfixed by the large screen displaying the details of his face, slightly closed eyes, the subtle tension of his neck, and an expression that was hard to decipher between pain and pure love. As the song moved toward the chorus, the intensity increased slowly but surely. Jimin wasn't just singing. He was telling a story of loss, of fleeting beauty, and of the desire to embrace something that keeps slipping away. A snow crystal, in the song's metaphor, is something beautiful yet impossible to hold forever. And that night, Jimin seemed to embody that metaphor. His unique high, raspy vocal timbre lent a beautiful, agonizing dimension to the song's melody. As he reached the song's emotional high note, Jimin lifted his head, his eyes wide open, staring at the sea of light before him, and let out a note so clear it seemed to pierce the cold air of the stadium. It was a transcendental moment where the boundaries between singer and audience dissolved. Everyone there could feel the vibrations of his voice traveling across the concrete floor and reaching their very cores. But there was something different about his performance this time. There was a certain finality in the way he held the microphone, a firmness that wasn't usually there. After the final high note died down, leaving a vibrating echo in his ears, Jimin remained standing straight in the center of the stage. The lights began to dim slowly, leaving only a single white spotlight focused on him. He didn't immediately bow as he usually did. He simply stood there, gazing around the stands, from left to right, as if he were trying to commit every face, every light, and every emotion to memory one last time. The faint smile that curled his lips wasn't one of explosive joy, but rather a quiet farewell. Without a word into the microphone, without the lengthy speech that usually graces major concerts, he simply placed his hand on his chest, bowed deeply, longer than usual, and then turned away. His footsteps were audible amidst the sudden silence. He walked away from the edge of the stage and into the darkness behind the curtain. He didn't look back. There was no dramatic final wave, no tears deliberately displayed for the cameras. He simply walked away, leaving the stage still warm with the lingering scent of his voice. Behind him, fake snow began to fall from the ceiling, covering the spot where he had stood just seconds ago. The fans remained glued to their seats, waiting for him to return for an encore or at least a sign. But Jimin was truly gone. His sudden, silent departure after such a magnificent performance created a deafening emptiness. It was a wordless statement, a way of saying that his work for the night was done, that he had poured his entire soul into the song and had nothing left to give. His departure from the stage that night was the subject of endless discussion. It wasn't just the end of a song, but the closing of a deeply emotional chapter. The beauty of his live rendition of Crystal Snow left a haunting legacy for all who witnessed it. Jimin proved that sometimes, the best way to be remembered isn't through noise, but through pure beauty that then mysteriously fades into darkness, just as a snow crystal melts when we try to touch it. The silence he left behind at the Tokyo Dome that night spoke louder than any cheers, leaving a deep sense of longing and the realization that we had just witnessed something incredibly rare and precious, something that might never be repeated in quite the same way. Jimin's absence from the stage after that moment created an incredibly powerful emotional paradox in the minds of everyone in attendance. On one hand, there was the artistic satisfaction of having just witnessed one of the greatest vocal performances of his career. But on the other, there was a slowly creeping anxiety about the meaning of his solitary departure. The Tokyo Dome audience, usually erupting in hysterical cheers, now seemed hypnotized by the lingering energy left behind by the man from Busan. On the big screen, artificial snow particles were still falling slowly, piling up on the empty stage that moments before had been a sanctuary for his emotions. Jimin's departure, like that, without announcement, without a wave, and without a backward glance, felt like a living metaphor for the lyrics of Crystal Snow themselves. He arrived, touching our hearts with a cold yet searing tenderness, and then vanished just as we were trying to grasp his presence in its entirety. Backstage, the atmosphere was reportedly equally silent. The staff and crew could only stare at Jimin as he walked through the dark corridors to his dressing room, still slightly out of breath but with his eyes already elsewhere. There was no commotion, no grand post-performance celebration. It was as if Jimin had emptied his entire emotional tank into the microphone and left nothing for social interaction afterward. This silence then spread beyond the stadium, reaching social media, where millions of eyes who weren't there began to feel the weight of his departure through the amateur footage circulating. Everyone asked the same question: why did he leave like that? Was it a form of extreme exhaustion? Or was it an artistic statement about mortality? As the night progressed, speculation grew, but the most plausible answer lay in Jimin's fundamental nature as a deeply emotional perfectionist. For him, Crystal Snow that night wasn't just another tour date, but a release of a burden he'd been holding onto for a long time. When the final note faded, he felt his role was complete, and staying to receive praise would only detract from the purity of the sorrow he'd just sung. He chose to leave when the audience's emotions were at their peak, allowing them to remain in the moment undisturbed by the fact that he was, after all, a mere mortal who could tire. Such a departure was, in fact, the ultimate respect for the work of art. He allowed the song to linger in the air, while he himself stepped aside so as not to be a distraction to the feelings that were just beginning to blossom in his fans' hearts. That night, the Tokyo Dome witnessed how an idol can become a haunting memory in a matter of seconds. His sudden departure left a strange hunger, a collective longing for the tens of thousands who remained, staring at the empty stage in the vain hope that he would return. But the longer the stage remained empty, the clearer the message became, that the purest beauty is often fleeting and elusive. Like a snowflake falling onto the palm of your hand, Jimin provided warmth through the coldness of his clear vocals, only to melt and disappear before you could close your fingers to grasp it.